Robin is one of the most famous heroes there is, and his title and costume has been held by many different people over the years. But one thing that is usually true with Robin is that Robin is a kid or a teenager. Not always, to be fair, but usually he is, or she is. Which does beg the question, why does Batman continually endanger children by allowing them to be his sidekicks? Especially since most of them end up dead at one point or another. Well, we all know the real universe reason. Robin is a popular character and he sells a lot of comics, so obviously DC keep him out there. But this video is going to look at the reasons in the DC universe. What is the reason why Batman not only allows them to fight crime, but how does he justify it to himself, especially when a Robin dies? Now, as I said, there's been a lot of Robins over the years, so we'll only be looking at the main ones, namely Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, and Damian Wayne. Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson's origin is very similar to Bruce Wayne's, in that he had a loving family until criminals killed his parents right in front of him, which, needless to say, left some scars, which is very understandable, and it also left Dick Grayson wanting revenge.
One day, Alfred, Zuko's gonna have to pay for what he did. I'm gonna make sure of that.
So it's easy to see why he and Bruce were kindred spirits, and why Bruce was extra motivated to get justice for Grayson's parents, because he knows what this feels like. And that's the initial reason that he let Dick Grayson become Robin. Batman knows how much he got screwed up from watching his parents die, and he felt that Grayson needed to be personally involved in taking down the criminals who murdered his parents in order to give him closure.
Robin needed to help bring the men who murdered his family to justice.
So he could turn out like you?
So that he wouldn't.
He basically didn't want Dick Grayson to be as broken as Bruce Wayne is. And to be fair, Dick Grayson is a much more emotionally stable character. He gets on better with people, has reasonably healthy relationships, he can laugh and smile, and to a certain extent he's actually been able to move on with his life. Whereas Bruce Wayne really never left that alley where his parents were killed. So that's the reason why Dick Grayson initially became Robin, though after that he could have stopped, but Batman let him continue. And the reason to me for this is that trauma such as Grayson's lingers. I mean, watching your parents die and then getting revenge doesn't automatically get rid of the scars. This is the kind of thing that's going to last a lifetime. And basically, even the justice he got for his parents couldn't satisfy his need for revenge, because the pain's not just going to go away. And so fighting crime was a way for him to deal with this grief. And besides, the cat was kind of out of the bag on this one already. After all, he'd been on one mission with Batman and he proved himself quite useful, so why not go on another? And although fighting crime does seem to work for him for dealing with his problems, I must admit that it does seem unlikely that a therapist would recommend this as a healthy way of dealing with grief. But we all do grieve in different ways. And of course we have to remember that Batman having a sidekick helping him, especially someone with the same trauma as him, well, it probably helped to normalise his behaviour. He felt like, this person's doing just what I'm doing, so I can't actually be that nuts. And basically made him feel like being Batman was a rational reaction to his need for revenge. Essentially, he just needed a partner and a friend. So it makes sense that he'd want Grayson to continue being Robin. After all, as I said, they have quite a lot in common. Jason Todd. Now, in the retcon version of Jason Todd's origin, Batman came back to the Batmobile to find that Jason was removing the wheels so that he could sell them. He was doing this because he was penniless and living on the street. And instead of being angry, Batman instead saw potential in him, and so he decided to take him in and make him into the next Robin. But why? Well, Batman's logic is actually rather simple.
I knew even from the beginning he was dangerous. If I hadn't made him into Robin, he would have grown to do wrong.
You see, he believed that Jason Todd was already on a dark path, and that he was going to become a criminal, maybe even a super criminal. It might be starting out as petty theft, but it would escalate over time, and maybe end up with Jason even becoming a murderer. So Batman decided to take that part of him that rebelled against the rules of society and mould it into a passion for fighting crime. And so basically he made him into Robin in order to stop him from becoming a supervillain, and instead be a hero. Now I imagine you're thinking that Jason Todd was only stealing these tyres because he was living on the street, and so if Bruce Wayne took him in, then Jason wouldn't need to steal because all his needs would be provided for. And then Bruce Wayne could teach him right from wrong and guide him towards being a productive member of society. And maybe he could have, to be fair. But it seems that Batman decided that Jason Todd was already too damaged and too far along the path of becoming a criminal to turn back. And that one way or another, Jason would break the laws of the world. So he might as well break them in a way that helps people. This does seem like a bit of a leap, I know, but to be fair, Batman is the world's greatest detective, so maybe he saw something that we would miss. Of course, as it turns out, this was all a colossal failure on Batman's part, as not only did Jason Todd die, but he also briefly became a supervillain and took control of the crime of Gotham, murdering a lot of people along the way. Now, admittedly, this was actually part of a plan to do good by eliminating the criminals of Gotham who weren't afraid of Batman, namely Black Mask, Penguin, and all the others from his rogues gallery. And of course, he wanted revenge on the Joker, who was the one who killed him, which is pretty understandable to be fair. But even though as the Red Hood he did become a villain, he eventually became a hero again, or at least an anti-hero, and he may kill, but it is for the right reasons. So although Batman didn't stop him from killing, at least he doesn't kill the innocent. And it does have to be said that the fact that Jason did all of this kind of proves that Batman was right. Jason was on a dark path, and although Batman may have failed to stop him from going completely down it, well, at least he did guide him towards the right path, at least a little bit. Tim Drake. Now, Tim's different than the previous two Robins in the fact that unlike them, he actually sought out becoming Robin, and he went to Batman with the express purpose of becoming his sidekick. You see, Tim had figured out on his own who Batman was, and after the death of Jason Todd, he saw that Batman was going down an even darker path than before, and he feared what Batman might eventually do if he continued on it. And he reasoned that Batman needed a Robin, a partner who was more light-hearted and hopeful to help curb Batman's darker side. And after failing to convince Dick Grayson to become Batman's sidekick once more, he decided to instead become Robin himself. And he was determined to be Robin. And even if Batman had never taken him on as a partner, he would still have continued to be Robin, until he had proved himself enough and that Batman would have no choice but to take him on. So in Tim's case, Batman didn't so much allow him to become Robin, as he really had no way of stopping him. Unlike the others, Tim had a father and a home and wasn't dependent on Bruce Wayne financially, or even legally his responsibility. And although Batman of course eventually went along with it, he really had no choice. So in Tim's case, it really comes down to, he wanted it, and there was no stopping him. And after all, Batman had already had 2 kid sidekicks at this point, so it wasn't that big a deal to have another one. It wasn't exactly something that's like, oh my god, why has he got a child sidekick? It was actually quite normal for him. Although with that being said, Batman did of course have some reservations. After all, Jason Todd had just died. But he realised how determined Tim was, and so he went along with it. And in truth, he enjoyed having a partner to fight crime with once more, which is understandable. Damian Wayne. Now, admittedly, in some versions of Damian Wayne's character, Batman has actually tried to stop him from fighting crime, as he doesn't think a 10-year-old should be fighting crime. Which doesn't really make sense given Batman's past Robins, but hey, these are different versions and different writers are trying different things. But in most versions of Damian's character, Batman basically feels that it's really just too late for Damian to become anything else other than a leather-clad vigilante. And he's right. After Ra's al Ghul had 10 years to mould, train, indoctrinate, and basically brainwash him, really there's nothing else that Damian Wayne could be. And Batman figures it's better for him to fight crime with a code of no killing, rather than be the head of the League of Assassins, which realistically are his only 2 options. Not only because of the aforementioned brainwashing and training since birth, but because Damian Wayne revels in this lifestyle. Damian loves it, and there is nothing that anybody could do to stop him from living it. Hell, in the new 52 films, Batman even locks him up and keeps him as a prisoner in his mansion to stop him from fighting crime, and all he does is break out and escape to fight crime, because, again, he just loves it. And in the Batman Beyond comic, when Damian Wayne has grown up and broken away from the Bat family, he actually becomes the head of the League of Assassins. And while he is the head, he nearly commits an act of genocide that would have killed millions, if not billions, of humans. And he only really stopped because Batman stopped him. So in his case, it does seem like being Robin is the right course of action, because it's better for him to be a hero than a genocidal maniac. Because again, that's pretty much all he could be. After all, can you really see Damian Wayne settling down and becoming a bank manager or something? The guy's an assassin, a ninja, a superhero. He loves it, and he's not going to turn away from it. So again, in his case, Batman really just has no choice but to allow him to be his sidekick, because otherwise, he's just going to run around on his own doing the exact same thing, which is much, much more dangerous. And although it does seem a bit weird, it is safer for him to be with Batman than to be out on his own. And this is pretty much the deciding factor in pretty much all of the versions of these different Robins. That basically, Batman just couldn't stop them. All of them wanted this lifestyle in one way or another. They either wanted revenge, or they wanted to be a superhero, or they just loved the lifestyle.
It
feels awesome! Check me out! I'm Robin, the boy wonder! Are you kidding me? This rocks!
And no matter what happens or what goes wrong for them, they always return back to it. True, they do break away from it from time to time, having several months not fighting crime, or in some cases even several years, but they always inevitably return to it because they just love being superheroes. The adrenaline, the action, the fun, the justice, every aspect of it, they just simply love it. And if they'd gone down this route without training, then they'd almost certainly have been killed, because what they do is incredibly dangerous and they go up against incredibly well-trained people who are trying to kill them. So Batman had to train them in order to keep them alive. He didn't really want to do it in some respects, he had to, because it was the only way to save their lives. Now I know that's a slightly cynical view, and really Batman probably should have tried harder to curb them and guide them toward a more normal life. But at the end of the day, you can't save someone from themselves, and if they are determined to do something, then they will do it. And finally, I just have to say that one of the big reasons that he has them as sidekicks in the first place is the same reason that the Justice League exists. Because there are just some threats out there that you can't beat alone, and you need help. And the fact they are children is actually just very circumstantial. In fact, one of the best examples of this is in the show The Batman, where Barbara Gordon becomes Batgirl, and Batman doesn't want this because he thinks this is a kid and she shouldn't be fighting crime. And he tries his best to stop her. In fact, throughout the entirety of the season where she comes in, he refuses to let her fight alongside him. But even still, she keeps on fighting crime no matter what he does. And eventually he realizes that not only can he not stop her, but he actually needs her. Along with Robin, of course. Because one man can't fight a city full of crime alone. And if these characters had been adults, he still would have had them as sidekicks, as he does when they've grown up. It just so happens that when they found each other, they were in the right place to begin fighting crime, and they also happened to be children, and that's why they worked together. And at the end of the day, age is no barrier to success, so why shouldn't they fight crime? Now, these reasons that I've given are partly derived by me from these characters' adventures and conversations with one another, and in some places they're actually directly stated by these characters in certain stories. This is of course because a lot of people have pondered why are kids fighting crime, and some of the writers have attempted to answer it. So some of my answers have come from these. But do you agree with these reasons I've given? Or do you believe that there are other reasons that Batman allows kids to fight crime alongside him? Be sure to let us know in the comments. And I'd just like to say a quick thank you to those who made this video possible by donating to the Needle Mouse Productions page on Patreon. And as always, thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment.
This is the best day of my life.